We're live. So exciting.
All right.
All right, so let's give some time here for folks to hop on. What's cool is we're live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitter.
Oh my goodness.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
Hey
super excited.
everybody.
I'm actually going to LinkedIn right now to see how it looks as we welcome folks. So I see some folks hopping on. We're just giving a couple more minutes, y'all, as we allow more people to join. Oh yeah, look at that. 16 people, 17.
Wow.
Well, that's just on LinkedIn. So
On
this is
LinkedIn. My goodness.
this is going to be a great conversation, and I'm excited to be here with the three of y'all and learn a little bit more about the work, and yeah, I'm excited for the conversation. All right. Cool. So how are y'all feeling? Should we hop in, get started?
Let's get to it.
That's right.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. Cool. So why don't we start with some intros so the audience gets to know a little bit about our speakers here. Aaron, do you think we can start with you?
Sure. Gosh, I wish I could also see the people who have joined.
Yeah.
So it's a little more of a face-to-face, but I'll go ahead and try anyway. So I'm Erin Haney. I am the Senior Director of Policy and Law at Reform Alliance, which means that I oversee all of our legislative and policy initiatives. So that means when we're working on a county level with different offices, it can mean state legislation, which we're going to talk a lot about today. It can mean federal legislation. It can even mean when we talk about global and international types of laws governing supervision and reentry. I also oversee the work that the team does to highlight cases that underscore why we need reform in the supervision arena. And before coming to Reform, I worked with Jessica Jackson, who's our Chief Advocacy and Operating Officer here at Reform Alliance. I worked with her at Cut 50, where we did bipartisan legislation. But prior to that, I was an attorney for about a decade. I was a public defender, so working with folks who did not have money to hire a lawyer. I was part of the San Francisco Public Defender's Office, which I will say we used to say is the best defense money can't buy. We were very proud of the zealous representation that we gave folks. And then I specialized in death penalty representation. So working with people who were on death row in California, who, woke up every day under a sign that said condemned, who had been sentenced to die. So I worked trying to get them off of death row. So I come to Reform having done a lot of different things in the criminal justice arena, mainly direct services, but really having an interest in how we can make our communities safer, how we can really address some of the underlying causes of crime in terms of trauma and poverty and mental health, and how we can really create systems that support people so that people aren't just surviving, but actually thriving in the community.
We are so lucky to have you, Aaron, and I know the list of amazing things that you did. We could keep that going. So lucky to have you. Cam, can we go to you next?
Sure thing. So, hey, thanks, Kenny, man. Really, really happy to be here. My name is Cam Middlebrooks. I have the pleasure of serving as the state organizer for Iowa, a place that I call home. I've been involved with organizing from a young age. Back in 2008, I began serving as a national board member for the NAACP. Served there for 4 years. Went on to serve as the regional director in that space, and then found myself back in the nonprofit world, working with small businesses and nonprofits and really promoting minority-owned small businesses across this state. But I came to Reform most recently, working a partisan campaign, a gubernatorial campaign in this state. But really excited to get back into that issue-based work. I'm a true believer in, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent issues. And criminal justice is a permanent issue for me. And just feeling really grateful to be a part of an organization like Reform with some of these great leaders like Aaron, Kenny, and Miranda that you'll hear from later today. Excited about the work that we're going to do in this state and really the work we're going to do across this country.
Awesome. Welcome, Cam. Yeah, I know, I think you're newer to the organization, but I look forward to connecting and building with you. I hear you're that dude in Iowa, so we're lucky to have you as well.
Indeed. Kenny, I always got to tell folks there are Black folks in Iowa.
I wasn't gonna say it, no.
I know somebody out there was thinking it though.
Cool. And I know we have a lot to talk about Iowa. So we'll get that to that in a minute. Miranda, would love to hear from you and how you came to Reform.
Hey, everybody, and hopefully I have some fellow Hoosiers on our event. My name is Miranda Williams, and I am Reform's Indiana State Organizer. So I am the Cam of Indiana. I came to Reform after working for 16 years with the Indiana Department of Correction. All of my time in the prison system had been working with reentry, release processes, case management best practices, with my most recent focus being on transitional health care and ensuring that individuals with severe medical issues had an opportunity to have a strong transition plan that provided them access to care when they returned to the community. So they were returning to a community that treated them as one of their own. And their time in the system was done, and we were ready for them to be productive members, just like all of us. So I am the newer team member to Reform. This is my 5th week, but I feel like I've been ready for this job my entire life. And very few people can say that they're living their dream. But now when I say it, I really mean it. And Aaron has been great to work with. I mean, it's really powerful to be part of a process to change laws and work on reform to actually work for the people and work for public safety. So I'm excited for everybody to get to know about Reform and what it looks like in Indiana. We're brand new and we're here to stay. So I'm excited that Reform has made a presence and we're ready to go.
Amazing. We are definitely lucky to have you, Miranda. And yeah, I look forward to getting to know you and learn more about the work you do, hopefully right here. So, the goal of the conversation is how a bill becomes a law, right? We really wanted to empower our folks. Obviously, Reform has passed 16 bills in 10 states, in our short tenure. And so I remember when I first learned how a bill became a law, I just felt so empowered, so energized. I wanted to go out and talk to my lawmaker and congressman and try and make it happen. So that's what I think we're all about at Reform is trying to provide value for our folks and empower our folks, especially our system impacted folks. And so we hope that and please throughout the live here, please be asking questions. We'll make sure to put them up here on the live and hear from Miranda, Cam, and Aaron as we go through the live here. So, but why don't we just kick it off, Aaron? I would love to hear from you, just your extensive career in the space. How does a bill become a law?
Amazing. Okay. So we were saying, there's the song and I feel like the cartoon that goes with this, and that's going to be way more entertaining than what I can give y'all. But I will do my best. I'm going to say this is the Reform way of how a bill becomes a law. So how a bill becomes a law, Reform edition. I do want to sort of my lawyer hat on, just give a caveat that every jurisdiction is different. And it varies pretty dramatically, which is part of what makes it so fun to work at Reform. So we have experts like Miranda and Cam who are experts in their own states about how this stuff works. And it works totally different in Iowa than it does in Indiana, right? So they have not only different expertise about their communities and what's happening in their own jurisdiction, but also about how the bill in fact becomes a law. And Kenny, as you said, so we've passed 16 bills in 10 states. And so I'm tempted to say the way a bill becomes a law is through like blood, sweat, tears, and magic, and a whole lot of people power. But really, if we trace it back, it usually starts with a story and an idea. So every provision of every bill at Reform Alliance comes from a real life story. As I talked about, I did, direct services for a while, working with people who are in the criminal legal system. We are not in the business of doing policy just to do policy. I think policy is fascinating and fun, but that's not why we do it at Reform. We do it to actually support people and make a difference. So usually our bills begin with a story. Somebody has come to us and told us about a way in which the supervision system has either helped or, unfortunately, more often hurt them. And so we build off of those stories and issues and come up with a policy draft, right? So based on that story, we do a lot of research. We try to figure out exactly what is the problem that is implicated by this story. And then just as importantly, what are possible solutions to it? At that point, we work with a number of stakeholders. And so we're talking about people who are directly impacted by these types of provisions. So people on parole and probation officers themselves, crime survivors, law enforcement, public defenders, prosecutors, Department of Corrections, really everyone that we can talk to, we try to get their input on this draft, right? And on what exactly the problem is and what the potential solutions are. So there's a whole lot that happens even before we get to what we would normally consider the legislative process, right? So once we have narrowed in on what we believe the problem is and what we believe the bipartisan, effective, evidence-based solution is to these real life problems, that bill goes to an author in one of the chambers, sometimes in two chambers, right? So you have the House and the Senate. And so usually we will introduce a bill in one chamber. Sometimes we introduce the same bill in two different chambers. So you have a author who introduces the bill, and you often have co-authors or co-sponsors who join on to the bill to say, this is a priority for us, right? We're going to help ensure that people understand this bill and move it forward. Once that happens, the bill goes to a committee. So again, this differs state by state. Sometimes you have a subcommittee, sometimes you just have a committee, but it gets assigned to a committee, which is a group of people who are going to focus on a certain type of issue. So you'll often hear folks talk about Judiciary Committee or the Courts and Rules Committees. So it goes specifically to a committee that is relevant to the subject matter of the bill. And then usually, again, it's different at each jurisdiction, but usually this is the point at which you have a lot of exciting debate and information about the bill. So ideally, you're going to have experts on both sides of the bill. So ideally, if it's one of our bills, you're going to have a lot of experts in support and hopefully no one in opposition, but often we'll have some really important voices in opposition. And so you have experts on those subjects essentially testify, right, in front of the committee members about why this bill is important, why they should vote yay or nay on the bill, and what impact it will have. From there, the committee votes on the bill, sometimes same day, or if you are like us in Indiana this week, sometimes they hold the vote until the next week. Another really important thing that can happen during the committee is you can have storytellers talk about, and we talked about those real life stories, right? How these bills come about to begin with. You can have people whose stories inspired the bill actually testify and tell the lawmakers what happened to them. So once the committee votes on the bill, hopefully it makes it out of committee if it's a good bill. During this time, amendments can be filed, right? So people may have changes that they want to have to the bill. People can introduce amendments in the committee or after the committee, again, depending on the jurisdiction. The amendments are debated and voted on. And then ultimately, once you make it through the committee, the bill goes to the floor. So it gets an entire vote from that chamber. So if your bill starts in the House, you may have just one committee to make it through. You may have two, it depends. But ultimately, you will end up on the floor of the House. where you get a full vote. And once you're done with all of that, you then go to the second chamber. So if you start in the House, you get through all that, you get through your committees, you get a vote on the floor, all the amendments happened in the House, you go over to the Senate where you do the exact same thing again. And so you go through committees there, you ultimately get a vote. Once that happens, then it goes to the governor or the president, whether you're, if you're state level or federal, for a signature or a veto. There are also jurisdictions that have a lot of really interesting changes at that level as well, right? So you may have governors who can do all kinds of line amendments, all kinds of stuff, but that is generally all of the many steps that you go through with an entire coalition of folks to help a bill become a law.
It is just, I think this is just the most fascinating part of the work that we do. And yes, big steps.
Next time you just watch the cartoon. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I love that. Thank you, Aaron. I definitely feel like it was just like campaigning 101. Like, I don't know if you ever thought about teaching a class, but I would, that was just amazing. Thank you, Aaron. So I know, this year we have a robust package, and we're I'm seeing all the messages coming in, y'all. So I'll make sure we get to it, but keep them coming, because at the end we'll definitely make sure we answer your questions. So thank you for those. But I know we have a robust package this year of policy and legislation, and we mentioned Indiana. So Miranda, I was hoping you could give us just an update on where we are with what we're doing in Indiana with the coalition and the bills and all the fun stuff we're doing.
Absolutely. I am like Aaron, this is really exciting stuff for me, and the universe really aligned with my position here at Reform, because Indiana's current House bill that we are working on, 1648, the primary message is focusing on geriatric and medical reprievement. So finding pathways to release for those who are incarcerated. And we know that prison is just not where they belong, which is interesting because that was all of my work when I was at the Indiana Department of Correction with my former executive director, Christine Dino. We transition plan for people just like this. And it seems stressful, and people get really scared when we talk about people who are sentenced to prison and should they be getting out early and what does that look like. But this bill really focuses on the geriatric population, the terminally ill, the serious medical conditions where there is no public safety. If we look at Indiana, we spend a lot of money on our medical contract caring for individuals who are incarcerated. We spend a lot of correctional resources, and there is no increase in public safety. So we're draining this money where it could be allocated to other resources where Indiana can really be benefiting from. So our goal is to find these pathways to release where individuals who were not sentenced to die in prison, they went to prison to serve a sentence for their crime, but they should not have to die there if they don't have to. So can we find pathways to release to get them transitioned back home to a system of care where they can die with dignity and respect with their loved ones, and most importantly, not in a prison setting where they are not a safety issue or a public safety issue. So it's extremely important, and it's a very small population with a few hundred people. But when we're looking about the cost of how much it costs to care for someone, that's resources that could be allocated to other avenues of public safety. So we really ask for your support in that, and really thinking about, as we're trying to transition these people out and giving them an opportunity to receive that care in the community. We want that to happen if they don't have to be in prison.
Got it. Yeah. So decrease taxpayer money, it sounds like. No impact on public safety. It kind of feels like a no brainer there, but
yeah, well, you would think so, but like we said, people are sometimes very firm, and you did the crime, you do the time. But I think when we're looking at if that was our loved one, if that was our mother, our father, our children, what would we want to happen? And we have stories of family members where their individual was terminally ill and, they passed away 8 days before they were released. Now, what could have happened? Could we not have done something sooner for that 8 days to happen, where we could have had that family member pass in peace? The family gets closure. The taxpayers, they reduce the cost of having that person in the community. And more importantly, there is no effect on public safety. So as we're talking about this bill, there is no impact. The longer we keep these individuals incarcerated, we're not increasing the public safety in our community. So I think that's the biggest thing to remember as we're working on these pathways to release, to kind of settle some anxiety and nervousness about it. And I would love, this is an opportunity, if you are Hoosiers on the call, like joining our coalition and having input and, thinking about different ways that reform can help work on these laws. And, what do we need to change in Indiana's probation and parole system?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Sounds like a powerful piece of legislation. And yeah, the comments are coming in too. So thank you guys. We'll definitely get to answering some of those questions towards the end here. But I want to give space here for Cam to talk about the work we're doing in Iowa. I know we have job fairs coming up, a whole bunch of coalition building going on. So Cam, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenny. Yeah, we're excited in Iowa. We have a very ambitious goals for not only this cycle, but as we continue to invest in this state. Just to give you a little bit of context, reform has been working in Iowa for the past 3 legislative cycles. But this year, I think, is a year that we're really excited about because we're getting some really great movement with our bill, right? Our goals really are to reduce recidivism, increase success rates, and strengthen our workforce with evidence-based reforms, right? So our bill right now, as constructed, is a probation's credit bill, right? So for an individual who is now on probation, they have an opportunity to earn time off on the back end of their term by 3 ways. The first being an education credit, which for an individual, if they get their high school diploma, their GED equivalency, go to post-secondary education, or even vocational certificate, right? They're able to earn time off on the back end. There's also a workforce credit. So for every 6 months that they're fully employed, they get time off of their terms. The third credit is a discharge credit. So every month that they are in compliance with the terms of their probation, they're again earning time off of their term. Now, folks, this does several different things, right? Number one, it incentivizes a justice impacted individual to acclimate back into society in a positive way. But it also does another thing for our probation officers, right? By getting these folks off the rolls early, it lightens their load and allows them to focus their time on people that need it most, right? At the end of the day, this is not only incentivizing people to get back to work, but it's also saving our state money by not having to over supervise folks that are already doing what they need to be doing to be active members in society. We are so excited about this bill, not only because of the bipartisan support that we're getting on the legislature, but also the bipartisan support that we're getting out in the community. Kenny, you mentioned this coalition building. I'm so excited about the coalition that we're building in Iowa because we got people from so many different walks of life. I got folks that are from progressive organizations like the NAACP who have signed on to support, but we also got folks that are more right of center, like American for Prosperity, Faith and Family Leader. They may come to this bill through different lenses, right? Either from the equity lens or the workforce lens. But the great thing is that they're in this space together, willing to work hand in hand, locked arms to get this passed. Just so far this year, we've already made it out of subcommittees in the House. If you want to do some research and find the bill, you can find it in the House. It's Bill HSB 55. And on the Senate side, we've gotten out of subcommittee as well. And it's a Senate study bill SSB 1004. We're making progress, but we're really invested in this community. And one of the ways that we're doing that, you alluded to this already, Kenny, we're actually going to be hosting the Reform Alliance's 3rd ever job fair in the country this next week on Wednesday in this great state of Iowa. We have over 10 employees that will be servicing, that will be there ready and willing to employ people with criminal backgrounds and have hundreds of jobs that are open. How important this is for Iowa is very key, Kenny, because right now, currently, we have 79,000 jobs in this state that need to be filled yesterday. And we don't have the young population to fill it. A lot of our young people are moving out of this state. We don't have the current population to fill it. But one way that we can do that is by getting folks that have a history, a criminal background history, or been justice impacted, pathways back to the workforce. That's why we're so excited for the members of our coalition to really engage with us, not on this bill, but also engage with us moving forward in this state as we come back with more and more reforms to create more and more pathways. So again, we can reduce recidivism, we can increase success rates, and we can strengthen our workforce, again, with evidence-based solutions, right? Because, Kenny, I like to say we want to be smart on crime and not dumb on punishment. And the way that we do that is we work together, bringing everybody who has a cause or concern to see their communities grow in a safe way. And by getting folks who, have had those struggles that are currently supervised, giving them a pathway to not only get themselves educated, but also to get back in the workforce.
Amazing. Thank you, Cam. And definitely more information about the Iowa Job Fair will be in the chat there. And obviously you can find it if you, well, obviously you're on our social media, so just scroll down and you'll find the link there. But thank you, Cam. Exciting news about Iowa and Miranda about Indiana. Aaron, I wanted to pass it back to you because I know we're also working on the federal level. We're super excited about the possibilities and opportunities there. Can you give us an update on the big plans?
Well, you heard how fired up Cam and Miranda are about some of the state work that we're doing. We are also incredibly excited about our federal work. One of the amazing things about federal work is that it touches all of us, right? And so it's an opportunity for everybody, no matter where you are, to get involved and to help make change in a system that really desperately needs it. So the federal system works a bit differently than the state systems, but it has something called federal supervised release. Federal supervised release is a type of supervision that anybody who goes into the federal prison is supposed to get afterwards. And so really it is not as a punishment. It is not in the same way that sort of parole or probation might be part of your punitive sentence. Supervised release itself is specific to aiding in reentry. And so when it first came about, it was really just supposed to be in cases where people needed some extra support. It has ballooned now so that, as I said just a second ago, pretty much everybody who goes into federal prison ends up on federal supervised release. Now, if federal supervised release was actually supportive and aided in reentry, and that was all that it did, that might be fantastic. But unfortunately, as we know with a lot of forms of supervision, instead of being an alternative to incarceration, they end up being a mass driver of incarceration. So in the federal system, the majority of people who are revoked and go back into prison on supervision are folks who are there for something like technical violations. So this means that they haven't committed a new crime. They have violated a condition of their supervision. When I was a public defender, I didn't deal a lot with folks who had probation and parole cases. And I didn't work with anybody on federal supervised release at the time. If you had told me that you could be in federal prison, not for committing a crime, but for breaking a rule, that would have baffled me. And so knowing that there are so many people who are going through this, really, reform felt like we had to do something. We kept hearing the stories. And so we have legislation. We have bipartisan legislation. We're very, very proud. Senator Coons and Senator Cornyn, something that has been almost impossible to do on the federal level, getting Democrats and Republicans together to agree on something. And really the federal legislation does 5 big things. Number one, it focuses resources where they're most critical to safely reduce unnecessary grants of supervised release. So as I mentioned, there's a bunch of people now under supervision who may not need to be under it, right? It was intended to be something that was really sort of right sized and really to help support folks. Now pretty much everyone is on it, right? So the way that we're doing that is we're getting rid of presumptive supervised release. We're making sure that it's an individualized assessment so that only people who really should be on supervised release will be on it. The second thing it does is it rewards rehabilitation. So there are all kinds of hoops that you have to jump through in the federal system, including you have to be on supervised release for at least a year before you can ask for early termination. And so we're getting rid of that threshold. And we are incentivizing folks, right? So Cam talked a bit about incentives in Iowa. That's a huge part of the federal bill, right? If you are somebody who's been engaged in activities that reduce recidivism, like education or work, you should get credit for that, right? The criminal legal system cannot be all stick, no carrot, right? We need ways to actually help incentivize people just like we do in any other walk of life. So if you're able to make it through all your conditions of supervised release and somehow work or care for a loved one or go to school, that's something that we should appreciate and recognize, and you should be able to work towards early discharge. Next, it safeguards due process protections and increases socioeconomic equality in the legal system. Currently, there isn't a good mechanism for courts to appoint somebody to help you if you want to have your supervised release ended early. Our bill creates a mechanism for the court to do that, which is a huge deal. And then it returns judicial discretion and revises counterproductive mandatory revocation policies. That's a fancy way of saying it gets rid of mandatory revocations. We often talk about mandatory minimums for sentences. There are certain things that if you do them in the federal system while you're on supervision, even though they aren't a crime otherwise, so if you fail a drug test, for example, you may be mandatorily revoked. The judge doesn't have discretion. You go right back to prison. And so this eliminates that and gives back judicial discretion. And then the last thing that it does is it identifies areas of improvement within the federal supervision system. So it really takes a look at the supervision system as a whole and identifies where are services needed, where could we be doing things better. So it's sort of, it gives a report on who's in this system, who are we actually helping versus hindering, and where are more services and resources needed to really uplift folks. So we are incredibly excited about our federal bill. Again, like I said, it's a way for everyone to get involved, no matter where in the country you are. It's something that we hope that you will want to advocate on and lead on. And just like in Indiana and Iowa and the other jurisdictions that we're working in, it is an incredible bipartisan coalition led by people who are directly impacted, who really, really not only have been asking for this to change, but have written the text of the law to ensure that it will change, and that their stories, right, will have a different ending than the difficult ones that they so too often have now.
Super, super exciting. Thank you, Erin. And I know each of you have touched on this, but there's just so much that individuals can do, to help create this change. And I'll just add, I mean, the biggest piece, I think, is storytelling. Storytelling, Erin, as you mentioned, is sort of, identifying and talks to the issues and the problem and helps, sort of craft the legislation around the individual's experiences. And so we have obviously big social media platforms, and we love to highlight folks who, want to utilize their story to create change. And we know it's not easy, right? It's a lot of trauma that comes with it and different things, trying to relive some of that. But we are definitely here. Like, once you're a part of our community, we're definitely here for you. So we encourage folks to share their story, to sign different petitions and be a part of our coalitions. And we're getting some love from the chat here. But before we go there, I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything else that folks can do to participate in actions and change for coalitions and legislation and storytelling.
Yeah, I would just say, man, go to our coalition sites. Iowans United.com is the Iowa Coalition website. It's a great way for you to figure out how to get engaged, how to tell your story, how to be a part of the process, because we need every single person to be a part of this process. This is bipartisan. We're talking about our friends, our family, our neighbors, and their success rate. And it is dependent upon the work that we're willing to put in.
Absolutely. And I think in line with that, Cam, also become a reformer, right? So please go to Reform Alliance, sign up, get the alerts. This isn't something where we are just talking at folks. This is something where you will become an integral part of the solutions and of the leadership in getting these bills passed, whether it's through telling your story, through reaching out to legislators or other folks in the community. We need you in order to do this. And so please sign up, be active, contact us and help us.
Yes. And I'm gonna just pull up here. We have a question here for Miranda. It's probably a late question. I know, Miranda, you spoke about Indiana already, but Tristan Foster here wants to learn more about Indiana. I see. I don't know, Miranda, if you want to say more.
Okay, well, hearts to my Hoosiers. So, well, you can learn more about the work that Indiana is doing by joining our Indiana Secure Communities Coalition. So we are not as fancy as Iowa. We don't have our website up yet. We've actually we were just created in January. So if we can put my email in the chat, but definitely joining the coalition, following House Bill 1648, becoming a reformer. We have a social media event on March 9th at 6 p.m. that discusses what that looks like and what that means. But definitely any calls to action that you hear from that reform is asking for, writing letters of support, writing your legislators about this bill would definitely help us get to the finish line so Erin can sleep and relax and enjoy her life. So, and we get to make our community safer. So what's a better way to make that happen than being right in the middle of the mix and being part of that change?
Thank you, Miranda. And then just Roddy is just showing some love here. Thank you, Roddy D. Any last minute questions here from the audience? We're happy to answer.
I see one, Kenny, if it's okay. I think Roddy had a good question about sort of how do you explain to people the amount of sort of compromises, right, that have to go into this. And it relates also to Vanessa's comment that I see about how she feels like those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, Vanessa, because I agree 100%. I think a lot of what our job is at Reform is to bring people together who are experts on this issue because they are directly impacted, and to make sure that they aren't just heard and that they don't just have a seat at the table, but that they are actually leading the movement, and that their voices are echoed in the text of the laws that are passed. And so, Roddy, I mean, I think what we do is we're very accountable to our stakeholders. So we bring folks along the way on this journey. As I said, we want them to lead. And one of the bright line rules that we have at Reform is do no harm. So bills do sometimes have to get watered down in order to make any progress. If our bill hurts one person, that's a problem for us, right? So we need it to help someone, even if it's a small population of people, right? Sometimes the harm that's being done to that population of people is unconscionable. So you really have to focus on what you can do to help folks, what we can get across the finish line without causing any harm. So anytime somebody wants to compromise by putting an enhancement in our bill or creating more punishment for somebody else, we always fall back to that mantra to do no harm, and that justice is not the same as punishment, right? And Reform Alliance is about justice, not just about punishment. And so hopefully that helps a little bit. And Vanessa in particular, I hope that you reach out to us and get involved. Would love to learn from you and your leadership.
Thank you, Erin.
Okay. And if I could just expand on that just a little bit more, one of the things that I'm really proud about that Reform does is our hiring practices. I mean, how many folks work at a Reform that are just as impacted themselves? Like, I get surprised every single day to hear somebody else's story. And this is something I don't even know if I've told you guys yet, but I was on probation 10 years ago. I know the hurdles that it takes, right? And when I talk to my other colleagues who are just as impacted, they understand the struggles that we're fighting for. And I think that's so key. Reform is we're we're living this day in and day out with the way that we employ people, the way that we go about our process. As Aaron said, right, do no harm. We're not going to introduce a bill that is going to even harm one person, right? We're very thoughtful about our process moving this legislation depending on the state. We're very, very thought about who we hire. So we're making sure that we can truly speak authentically about these issues that we're focused on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Cam. And I see a question here about job fairs. So Cam, I don't know if you want to touch on the Iowa Job Fair, and I know we have a Brooklyn Job Fair coming up.
Yeah. So we're really excited. The 15th of next week, we'll be hosting our job fair here in Iowa from 1 to 7 p.m. And the really cool thing about our job fair is, right, not only are we bringing employers that are willing and ready to hire folks on the spot and hire folks that are just as impacted, but we also have community organizations there as well, right? So when folks need help, like for instance, folks that come in, men, you can get your hair cut on site before you go talk to somebody. Ladies, get your makeup done. If you don't necessarily have the outfits that you think are professional enough, we are bringing in men's closets and women's closets so folks can get suited on site and they can leave with that completely free, right? These are the type of services that we're offering. A number of reentry programs, job readiness programs, community resources, housing programs. We are truly trying to figure out how we wrap our hands around our community members, not only by getting them employed, but while they're on that process of getting employed, giving them the resources that they need to show their best face.
Amazing. And yeah, I know Brooklyn Job Fair is coming up as well in March. More details to come, so stay tuned. And I know we'll have a bunch more this year. So please visit reformalliance.com, become a reformer, become a member. Thank you, Aaron, Cam, Miranda, for this wonderful conversation. Go ahead, Miranda. I don't know if you want to add something.
I don't want Indiana to be left out. The only reason why we don't have a job fair scheduled right now is because we just got here. But I don't want my fellow Hoosiers to feel like that's not happening. Just give us some time, and then we'll have some job fairs to report out too. Not that we're in competition with Iowa, but I'm just saying.
Coming soon. Well, thank you all. I hope this was insightful for our audience, our reformers, and I hope we got some new community and family members. Thank you, Aaron, Cam, and Miranda, for everything.
Hey, thank you, Kenny, man. You did an amazing job facilitating this, and Lillian on the back end doing the production. It truly is the teamwork that makes the dream work. So I appreciate y'all.
Appreciate it. Yes, and thank you everybody for listening. Come visit our site.
Well.